Denise Carter was 34 years old when she took an unpaid day off work for the first time in 6 years to watch her husband walk across a graduation stage. 3 jobs, 6 years. Phlebotomist by day, rideshare driver by night, caterer on weekends. All so Terrence could finish law school without debt. She'd never once complained. Never once asked for credit. At the reception, she stepped away to get 2 drinks, glowing with pride. That's when she heard him. Laughing with his new colleagues, cologne she didn't recognize, telling them his wife worked 3 jobs and never once asked where the money actually went. His sucker wife, someone who thought a ring meant more than it did. Terrence didn't see her standing 6 feet away. He didn't know about the business credit line already open in both their names. He didn't know what she'd find in the weeks that followed. Denise set down both drinks, smoothed her dress, and smiled for the cameras. But something in her had already changed forever. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today. And if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The alarm went off at 5 a.m. Denise didn't slam it. She never slammed it. She reached over in the dark, pressed the button with one finger, and sat up before her body could argue with her. The apartment was quiet, cold. The kind of cold that creeps through old windows no matter how many times you push foam tape into the cracks. She sat on the edge of the bed for exactly 30 seconds. She'd learned that was all she could afford, then stood and moved toward the bathroom without turning on the overhead light. Terrence was still asleep. He needed his sleep. Bar prep was exhausting, he'd told her. She believed him. She believed most things he told her back then. By 6:15, she was already in the hospital break room, pulling on her second glove and checking her draw card. St. Augustine Medical Center smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, and Denise knew every hallway of it by heart. She'd been a phlebotomist here for 4 years. Quiet, quick, good with difficult veins and worse moods. Patients who cursed at needles softened when she walked in. Something about the way she moved, steady and unhurried, made people trust her. Her supervisor, a broad-shouldered man named Earl, always said she had the gift of calm. She didn't feel calm. She felt like someone had wrung her out and hung her on a line. Her shift ended at 2:30. By 3 p.m. she was in her car, a 2017 Honda Accord, with a pine tree air freshener and a charging cable long enough to reach the back seat, logged into the rideshare app, picking up fares. She worked it until 11, sometimes midnight. She'd gotten good at keeping a thermos of coffee in the cup holder and a granola bar in the door pocket, eating at red lights when her hands stopped shaking. On Saturdays, she catered, a small operation she'd built herself over 3 years, mostly bridal showers and birthday lunches, the kind of events where women in nice shoes didn't notice the person in the black apron refilling the shrimp tray. She was good at that too, good at being invisible when it served someone else's moment. 3 jobs, 6 years. She'd done the math so many times, it had stopped feeling like a number and started feeling like weather, just the condition she lived in. At home, the distance was something you could almost miss if you weren't looking. Terrence would be at the kitchen table when she came in late, his casebooks open, a highlighter behind his ear. He looked so much like the man she'd married, jaw set, eyes focused, that particular crease between his brows that meant he was working through something hard. She used to smooth that crease with her thumb. Lately, she didn't reach for him the way she used to. "There's rice on the stove," she'd say. "Thanks," he'd say. Not looking up, she noticed the cologne sometime in February. It wasn't his usual, the cedar and sandalwood she'd bought him 2 Christmases ago. This was sharper, more expensive. She didn't ask where it came from. She told herself he'd probably gotten a sample at the mall. In March, he told her about the pre-graduation mixer at the firm. "It's a work thing," he said, his eyes on his phone. "Pretty exclusive. I don't think it'd be your scene." "I could clean up," she said lightly, meaning it as a joke. He didn't laugh. It's just... These are colleagues, Denise. Partners. I don't want it to be weird. She let it go. She was too tired to pull at it. What she didn't let go was the night she'd mentioned, carefully, that the nursing program at Whitmore College had spring enrollment still open. She'd been looking at the brochure on her phone between fairs. It wasn't a plan yet, just a thought she was letting herself have. "You'd quit the hospital?" he asked. "Not quit. Transition, eventually. The program is nights and weekends. That's the money we're living on, Denise." He said it like she was a child who'd suggested they vacation on Mars. She folded the thought back up and put it away. "One more year," she told herself. She'd been telling herself that for 6 years. Graduation day was a Thursday in May. Denise took an unpaid day off, the first one in 4 months, and wore the navy dress she'd bought on sale in January, holding it for this exact moment. She did her hair. She put on the pearl earrings Terrence had given her on their 3rd anniversary, back when he still looked at her like she was something worth looking at. She sat in the 3rd row of the auditorium with her hands folded in her lap, and when Terrence's name was called, Terrence Allen Carter, she clapped so hard her palms stung. He looked good up there, tall, polished. She felt the old pride rise in her chest like something warm, and she let herself feel it, all of it, because she had earned that moment too. At the reception, the room hummed with laughter and glasses clinking. Denise made her way toward the bar to grab them both something to drink. She was almost there when she heard his voice, carrying over the music, loose with confidence, and she slowed. She stopped. He was standing with a small group near the far end of the bar. 3 colleagues, and a woman in a white blazer Denise didn't recognize, laughing at something he'd just said. "Worked 3 jobs the whole time," Terrence was saying, grinning. "Never once asked where the money actually went. I mean..." He shook his head, chuckling. "That's my sucker wife. Thought the ring meant more than it did." The woman in the white blazer laughed. Denise stood very still, a glass she didn't remember picking up cool in her hand. Denise stood there for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds of the room going muffled, of the glass going cold in her hand, of Terrence's laugh cutting through the noise like a blade through warm bread. Clean. Easy, like it cost him nothing at all. Then she breathed in. She breathed out, and she walked back toward the reception. She smiled for 11 photographs. She knew it was 11 because she counted. It gave her something to do with the part of her brain that wanted to scream. She shook hands with 2 partners from the firm. She laughed at a joke she didn't hear the beginning of. She stood beside Terrence with her hand on the small of his back, and when he looped his arm around her shoulders for a photo, she leaned in just slightly, just enough to look like a wife who was proud. The woman in the white blazer introduced herself as Vanessa. She had the kind of smile that lived mostly in her eyes, bright and practiced at once. She shook Denise's hand and said, "You must be so happy for him." "I really am," Denise said. Her voice came out smooth, level. She almost didn't recognize it. Terrence beamed. Denise kept her face open and warm and gave away absolutely nothing. In the car on the way home, he talked the whole 40 minutes. The firm's reputation in the state. A senior partner who'd already taken an interest in him. A conference in Atlanta in the fall. He used the phrase "new trajectory" twice, and building something real at least 3 times. He was lit up in the way she used to love. Animated, ambitious, his hands moving when he talked. She watched his profile in the glow of passing streetlights. She used to look at him and feel proud. Now she was looking for information. "You seemed like you were having a good time," he said, glancing over. "It was a beautiful reception," she said. He reached across and squeezed her hand once. She let him. At home, he was affectionate in the easy, distracted way of someone who believed everything was fine. He poured 2 glasses of wine she hadn't asked for, toasted to us, and talked for another hour about the firm's benefits package and how they should take a real vacation once I'm settled in. She nodded. She asked small questions that kept him talking. She learned more in that 1 hour of listening than she had in the last 3 months of trusting. When he finally went to bed, she sat in the living room with her wine untouched on the coffee table. The apartment was quiet again. Same cold as the morning, creeping through the same old windows. She looked around at the second-hand couch, the IKEA bookcase she'd assembled herself, the framed photo from their wedding on the wall. She and Terrence, laughing at something off-camera. She wondered when he had stopped thinking of this as a real life and started thinking of it as a runway. She didn't let herself cry. That wasn't a decision she had to fight for. It was just where she was. Somewhere past the place where tears come fast. Somewhere quieter and more dangerous. She went to the bedroom doorway and listened until she heard his breathing slow and deepen. Then she went back to the living room, pulled her phone off the charger, and called Angela. It rang twice. Angela picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice soft and already worried. Angela was always already worried when Denise called past midnight. What happened? Nothing yet, Denise said. Low and even. I need to ask you something. Okay. I need you to keep a secret. Not the kind where you ask me questions I'm not ready to answer. The kind where you just hold it until I know more. A short pause. Angela knew Denise well enough not to push. I'm holding it, she said. Something is wrong, Denise said. I don't know the full shape of it yet, but I'm going to find out, and I need to do that without reacting first. Denise. Angela's voice dropped. Are you safe? Yes. That was the truest answer she had. I'm not in danger, I'm just... She stopped, searched for the right word. I'm not ready to move until I know what I'm looking at. Then I'll be here when you are. That's all I need. They stayed on the line a moment longer without speaking, the way old friends can. Then Denise said goodnight and set the phone face down on the cushion beside her. She sat in the dark for a while. The anger was there. She could feel it sitting in her chest, dense and quiet, like a stone dropped into still water that hadn't yet hit the bottom. She didn't reach for it. She didn't push it away. She just let it sink. Find out everything first, she told herself. Everything. Then move. She had 1 more year of being underestimated. She was going to use every second of it. By morning, she knew her first step. Not a confrontation, not a conversation. She would call her cousin David Whitfield, real estate attorney, careful man, someone who knew how paper trails worked, under the simple pretense of updating their estate paperwork, now that Terrence had officially graduated. She called David at 8 in the morning. He was already at his desk. She could hear paper shuffling, the low murmur of a radio behind him. David was that kind of man, the kind who started early and never made a big deal out of it. Denise. His voice was warm. Congratulations to you both. How was the ceremony? Beautiful, she said. Same word she'd used with Terrence in the car. It was becoming automatic. I wanted to catch you before your day got away from you. Now that Terrence has graduated, I figured it was time to update our estate documents. Beneficiaries, maybe look at the property paperwork. Just tidy things up. A small pause. That's smart thinking, actually. A lot of people let that stuff drift. You know me, she said. I do. Another pause. Shorter this time. You want to do this now or schedule a call? Now works if you have 20 minutes. He had 20 minutes. David walked her through it methodically, the way he did everything. She pulled up their joint accounts on her laptop while he talked. Checking, savings. The home equity line they'd opened 3 years ago and never touched. She read him balances. He asked about the car note, the student loans in Terrence's name, whether they'd updated the beneficiary on her hospital retirement account. She answered each question carefully, her pen moving down a yellow legal pad, making notes in her own shorthand. Then David said, "Let me pull a joint credit report, just to make sure nothing's drifted while he was in school. It's good practice." "Go ahead," she said. She listened to the click of his keyboard. The radio in his office switched songs. Outside her window, a garbage truck groaned down the street. Then David went quiet for a moment. Not a thinking quiet, a reading quiet. She knew the difference. "Denise." His voice had changed, just slightly, careful now, where it had been easy before. "There's a business credit line here, opened about 6 months ago, in both your names." She kept her eyes on the window. "Okay. The limit is $50,000. The drawn balance is—" He stopped. "It's $40,000. The garbage truck turned the corner and disappeared. "Is there a linked account?" she asked. More clicking. "Yeah, the payments are being routed to a checking account, ending in—" He read her the last 4 digits. She wrote them down. She did not recognize them. "That's not one of ours," she said. "No," David said. "It's not." She asked him 2 more questions, practical ones, the kind that kept her voice level and her mind in the work. Could she get the full account details with her name on the line? Yes. How long before she could have documentation in hand? He could email her a summary within the hour. He would pull everything he legally could and flag what required next steps. "Thank you, David," she said. "This is exactly why I called. Denise." He said her name the way people do when they're trying to figure out how much a person already knows. "You doing okay?" "I'm doing what needs to be done," she said. "I'll call you soon." She ended the call and set her phone on the table. She looked at the number she'd written on the legal pad. $40,000. She said it to herself once, quietly, the way you repeat something to make it real. $40,000. She thought about the firm mixer Terrence hadn't wanted her at. "It's a work thing, Denise," said the way you say it when the real sentence is something else entirely. She thought about the cologne she hadn't bought him, showing up on his collar sometime in February. She thought about how, over the last year, his phone had started going face down whenever he set it on the counter. She had let each of those things land softly, given them the benefit of the doubt, because she had been working 3 jobs, and loving her husband and trusting the life they were building together was exactly what she believed it was. $40,000 said otherwise. She didn't know yet what the account was for. She didn't know whose name was on it, what it had paid for, how far back the planning went. She had a number on a page, and 4 digits of an account, and a feeling in her chest like pressure building behind a closed door. She was not going to open that door yet. She was not going to call Terrence. She was not going to ask him tonight over dinner, watching his face for a tell, hoping he'd trip over his own lie. That was a move made out of hurt. And hurt didn't win. Hurt just gave him warning. She needed the full picture, every line of it, the shape of the whole thing, laid out in front of her before she touched a single piece. She closed her laptop. The apartment was still. The legal pad sat in front of her with its one clean line of numbers. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she picked up her pen and wrote one word beneath the account digits. Everything. The next 2 weeks, Denise learned how to live 2 lives at once. On the surface, nothing changed. She woke up early. She drew blood at the hospital. She drove her rideshare routes at night, picking up strangers and depositing them safely at their doors. She came home to Terrence, who was busy with onboarding paperwork and firm orientation, who talked about his new colleagues with a shine in his eyes she used to find contagious. She smiled, she asked questions, she listened, and underneath all of it, she worked. Her hospital breaks were 12 minutes, sometimes 15 if the floor was slow. She had learned over 6 years of juggling schedules exactly how much could be done in 15 minutes when you were focused. She used the small break room on the 3rd floor, the one by the stairwell that nobody fought over because the coffee machine was broken. She'd sit with her phone and her earbuds in, and she'd call David. He always picked up. "The account is a personal checking account," he told her on the 3rd day. "Single name. I can't get you the full name through the credit line documentation alone, but I can tell you the routing number traces to a regional bank. A branch downtown, near the courthouse district. Near Terrence's firm." She wrote it down. "The 40,000, David said. "The timing and the amount. It looks like a down payment, Denise." She already suspected. She asked anyway. "For what?" "I'm working on it. Give me a few days." She gave him 4. He called her on a Thursday afternoon, just as she was walking to her car after a 12-hour shift. The parking lot was gray and cold, the kind of late spring day that forgot to be warm. "I found a property record," David said. "Condo purchase, closed 5 weeks ago." 5 weeks ago, 3 weeks before graduation, while she had been picking up extra catering shifts to cover Terrence's bar prep materials. "Address?" she asked. He gave it to her. That night, parked outside a grocery store between rideshare pings, she pulled up the listing on a real estate site. The photos were still live. Agents left them up sometimes, even after a sale. She scrolled through them slowly. It was a nice unit. 2nd floor, new appliances, a kitchen with dark countertops and pendant lighting, and a window over the sink that caught the afternoon sun in a way that made it look warm and deliberate. There was a gray couch in the living room that looked like it had been chosen, not inherited. A bed in the primary with a frame, not just a box spring on the floor. Someone had furnished it with intention. She memorized the address. She closed the app. A ping came through on her rideshare, a pickup 3 blocks away, and she accepted it, pulled out of the lot, and drove. The next Friday night, she got a pickup request near Terrence's firm. She almost declined it, then she accepted. The passenger was a young paralegal, chatty the way people are after 2 drinks at a work happy hour. He got in, gave her a destination in the North End, and started talking before she'd even pulled away from the curb. She let him talk. "Whole firm's buzzing," he said, scrolling his phone without looking up. "New associates always bring drama. This one guy, Carter, already telling people he's separated. First week, bold." Denise's hand stayed easy on the wheel. Her eyes stayed on the road. "Huh," she said. "I mean, no judgment." The paralegal shrugged. "Just surprising, you know? Brand new job. Already moving on from his whole personal life." He laughed a little. "Must be nice to just reset like that." She nodded in the rearview mirror. "Must be," she said. She connected Vanessa to the condo 2 days later. It wasn't complicated once she knew what she was looking for. There was a moving announcement, the kind people post without thinking. A single photo of a key on a countertop, a caption that said, "New chapter." The countertop was dark. The pendant light in the background matched the listing photo exactly. Vanessa's account was public. Denise looked at the photo for a long time. She didn't feel what she expected to feel. The jealousy she'd braced for wasn't the sharpest part. What cut deepest was the date on the post. 2 weeks before graduation, while Denise had been hemming the dress she planned to wear to watch her husband walk across that stage. This wasn't an affair that had gotten out of hand. It wasn't a man who had stumbled into something and panicked. This was a plan, a clean, considered, well-funded exit, funded by her blood draws and her midnight drives and her Saturday mornings hauling warming trays into other people's parties. He had used her labor to build his escape from her. She set her phone down. She thought about who else might know, who might have heard things, who might have been told a version of this story that she hadn't been given the chance to answer. She thought about Gloria. Terrence's mother lived 40 minutes away, in the same house she'd kept for 30 years. Denise hadn't visited since Easter. That was long enough that a check-in would feel natural. Normal. Just a daughter-in-law stopping by. She picked up her phone and sent a text. Gloria, I've been meaning to stop by. Are you free Sunday afternoon? Gloria Carter answered the door in her house slippers and a housecoat the color of old roses, and the first thing she did was reach for the grocery bags. You didn't have to do all this, she said, which was what she always said. I was already at the store, Denise said, which was what she always said back. It was their ritual. Denise handed over the bags, a rotisserie chicken, a bunch of collard greens, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, a box of the tea Gloria liked that was getting harder to find, and followed her mother-in-law through the narrow hallway into the kitchen. The house smelled like it always did. Lemon cleaner and something sweet, maybe a candle. 30 years of the same curtains in the same windows. Family photos lined the hallway wall in mismatched frames, the kind of wall that built up over decades without anyone planning it. Terrence at his high school graduation. Terrence at his college graduation. A photo of him and Denise from their wedding, framed in gold. She looked at that one for just a second. Then she kept walking. Gloria made coffee without asking. Denise sat at the kitchen table and watched her move around the small space with the ease of someone who had never needed to think about where anything was. She was 63 years old, and she moved like a woman who had carried a lot for a long time and learned to carry it quietly. They talked about small things first. The neighbor's new dog, the church's upcoming fundraiser, Gloria's knee, which had been bothering her since February. Then Gloria set down her cup and folded her hands around it, and her expression shifted the way older women's faces shift when they're deciding whether to say something. I'm glad you came by, she said. I've been thinking about you. Denise kept her voice easy. Good thoughts, I hope. Gloria didn't smile. Terrence called me a couple weeks ago, before graduation. She paused. He said things between you two had gotten difficult, that you'd been pulling away. Distant, he said. She looked at Denise carefully. Cold was the other word he used. Denise set her own cup down, slowly. He said that, she said. He did. Gloria's eyes didn't leave her face. I told him marriage gets hard. I told him that's not a reason to give up on something. She hesitated, but I could tell he wasn't looking for advice. He was telling me something had already been decided. The kitchen was very quiet. Denise looked at the photograph on the wall above the stove. Gloria, younger, standing in a garden, squinting into the sun. Then she looked back at her mother-in-law. Gloria, she said, I had no idea he told you any of that. The silence that followed was a different kind. Gloria's hands tightened around her cup. What do you mean? She said, but her voice had already changed, like some part of her already understood. I mean, he never said anything to me. Denise kept her voice calm, steady. Not about distance, not about the marriage unraveling. We have not had that conversation, not once. She paused. But he was telling you it was already over, weeks before graduation, while I was working extra shifts to cover his bar prep costs. Gloria was very still. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Something moved across the older woman's face. Not surprise exactly, more like recognition, the slow, sickening kind. His father did this, Gloria said. Her voice was quiet, flat in the way voices get when an old wound opens cleanly. He passed the bar in 1988. I threw him a party, cooked for 2 days. She stopped, pressed her lips together. 3 months later, he told me he'd already found an apartment, said I'd been pulling away for years. She shook her head once. I hadn't been pulling away. I had been working and raising his son, and I didn't have the time or the energy to perform happiness on top of all of it. Denise didn't say anything. She let the words settle. He had already decided, Gloria said. He just needed a story to tell people. She looked at Denise then, really looked at her the way she hadn't before. And I told that story for him, for years, because he told it to me first. She reached across the table and put her hand over Denise's. I'm not going to do that again, she said. They sat there a moment longer. Then Gloria straightened up and wrapped both hands back around her coffee cup. Her jaw was set. When I went through the divorce, she said slowly, I learned things I wish I'd known going in. His father worked at a firm with conduct policies. Ethics clauses, they called them. She looked at Denise with clear eyes. Financial misconduct involving shared assets, relationships between colleagues at different levels. She said it precisely, like she'd held the words in storage for a long time and knew exactly where they'd been kept. Those weren't small things. Those were the kind of things that could end a career before it started. She picked up her cup. I'm not going to say a word to Terrence, she said. Not one word. She held Denise's gaze. But I want you to tell me what you find out. Denise picked up a rotisserie chicken on the way home. She set the table, poured 2 glasses of water. When Terrence came in from the gym, damp-haired and in good spirits, she had everything plated and waiting. You cooked? He said. Threw something together, she said. They ate. Terrence talked about the firm, a partner who'd mentioned his name in a meeting, a case he might get to second chair. He was loose and easy the way he always was, when things were going well for him. Denise watched him across the table and nodded at the right times and asked small questions that kept him talking. After dinner, she cleared the plates and came back to the table with a folder. I need you to sign something, she said, before you get too deep into the new job. Terrence looked up from his phone. What is it? Refinancing paperwork. David suggested we look at the home loan, now that your income is changing. Could save us something on the tax side. She set the folder in front of him and opened it to the last page, where the signature line was flagged with a yellow sticky tab. He needs it back by the end of the week. Terrence picked up the pen without touching the pages. How many pages is this? 11, Denise said, but it's mostly standard language. The summary's on the first page if you want to read through it. He glanced at the first page. Then he looked at the signature line. Then he looked at her. You and David already went over this. We did. He clicked the pen open. You always were better with the paperwork stuff than me, he said, not as a compliment, more like something he was setting down. He signed. Denise closed the folder. Thanks, she said. I'll scan it tonight. He went to watch television. She went to the second bedroom they used as a home office, the one with the filing cabinet, the printer, the shelf of binders she had organized by year. She sat down at the desk, opened her laptop, and scanned the document. Then she opened their shared cloud account. It was an old account. They had set it up 3 years ago when Terrence got his first smartphone and kept losing his text backups. She had handled the setup. She had kept the login. He had, somewhere along the way, forgotten it existed. She hadn't. She opened the message folder. The backup was current. It synced automatically every night. She typed Vanessa's name into the search bar. The results loaded. She sat back. The earliest message was dated 14 months ago, a Thursday in February, just after 9 p.m. Terrence had written, "Tonight was a mistake, but I don't want to stop making it." Vanessa had written back 3 minutes later, "Then don't." Denise read slowly. She did not rush. There were hundreds of messages. She didn't read everyone. She didn't need to. She read enough to establish the shape of the thing. 14 months ago. February. That was 3 months into his final year of law school. That was when she had picked up the extra catering shifts on Saturdays to cover his bar prep materials. That was when she had stopped taking Sunday mornings for herself because the rideshare surge hours were too good to pass up. She scrolled to a message from 8 months ago, mid-October. Terrence. She has no idea. She's too tired to notice anything. Vanessa. That's sad. Terrence. It is what it is. Denise read that exchange twice, not because she needed to, because she wanted to make sure she understood it exactly, without any feeling coloring the meaning. She wanted it clean. She wanted to know what it was. It was not a man who had fallen into something he hadn't planned. It was not weakness or loneliness or a bad season in a marriage. It was a decision, made early, maintained deliberately. While she drove strangers across the city at midnight and stuck needles into arms at 6 in the morning and smiled at Terrence over dinner and asked how studying was going. He had known. The whole time, he had known. She sat with that for a long moment. The house was quiet. The television murmured down the hall. She could hear him out there, comfortable, unbothered, watching whatever he wanted to watch in the life she had built around him. She did not cry. She opened a new email, attached the scanned disclosure document, and then created a second attachment. A document she had been building for 2 weeks. A clean timeline of messages with dates, content summaries, and screenshots she took now, methodically, one by one. She addressed the email to David. In the subject line, she wrote, "Ready to talk to a lawyer." In the body, she wrote 4 words. "I have everything. Call me." She hit send, then she closed the laptop, straightened the folder on the desk, and walked back down the hall to the living room. She sat down next to Terrence on the couch. "Good show?" she said. "It's all right," he said. She nodded and looked at the screen. David called her at 7:15 the next morning, before her first patient. She was in the hospital break room, still in her jacket, coffee going cold beside her. She had 20 minutes before her shift started. She picked up on the first ring. "I read everything," he said. "Okay." "Denise." He paused. Not the way people pause when they don't know what to say. The way they pause when they're making sure they say the right thing. "This is not small. You understand that, right?" "I understand that." The credit line alone, opened in both names, drawn without your knowledge, funneled to a down payment on a property you were never told about. That's marital asset misappropriation. And the messages give you a timeline that connects everything. This wasn't impulsive. "I know what it was," she said. A breath on his end. "I want you to talk to someone. A family law attorney. Not me. I don't practice in that space, and you need someone who does. But I want to refer you to a woman I trust. Her name is Patricia Odom. She's sharp, she's thorough, and she won't waste your time." Denise wrote the name on the back of a napkin. "Set it up for me," she said, "whenever she has something available." Patricia Odom's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, 12 blocks from Terrence's firm. Denise noticed that. She noticed it and said nothing. The office itself was clean and plain. No framed degrees on the wall, no heavy furniture meant to impress. Just a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out over the city's gray mid-morning sky. Patricia was a small woman in her late 50s, with close-cropped natural hair and reading glasses she kept pushing up the bridge of her nose. She had reviewed the documents David sent ahead of time. She did not waste the first 10 minutes explaining who she was. She opened the folder. She read. She asked questions in a flat, efficient voice, dates, amounts, whose name appeared where and when. Denise answered everyone. After about 40 minutes, Patricia set her glasses on the desk. "You have strong claims," she said. "Stronger than most people come in here with." "On the condo?" "On the condo, yes. It was purchased with funds drawn from a joint credit line without your knowledge or consent during the marriage. That makes it a marital asset, regardless of whose name is on the deed. You have a reasonable path to full ownership or equivalent compensation." She tapped the folder. "The business credit line itself, $40,000. You have a claim to repayment given the documented use of joint credit for a purpose that exclusively benefited him." Denise nodded slowly. "And spousal support?" 6 years of documented financial contribution to his education, 3 jobs, pay stubs, tax returns, tuition receipts, all time-stamped. Patricia looked at her steadily. "Judges notice that kind of paper trail. Yes, spousal support is very much on the table." The room was quiet for a moment. "What about the firm?" Denise asked. Patricia's expression stayed even, but something behind it sharpened. "David mentioned you had questions about their conduct policies." "His mother told me they have ethics clauses, relationships with subordinate colleagues, financial misconduct. Most firms at that tier do." Patricia folded her hands. "I've seen it applied before. An undisclosed relationship with a colleague at a lower level, combined with documented misuse of joint marital credit during the period of employment. That is the kind of thing a managing partner takes seriously, not because they care about the marriage, because they care about liability and reputation." She paused. "I'm not telling you what to do with that information. That's your decision to make. But yes, it would likely constitute a serious ethics violation." Denise looked at the window for a moment, the gray sky, the tops of buildings. "There's a dinner," she said. "The firm hosts a client appreciation event every year. Terrence mentioned it last week. He said it's in 2 weeks." She looked back at Patricia. "Partners will be there, colleagues, Vanessa Reyes, his mother." Patricia was quiet. "I want that to be the moment," Denise said. "Not a letter, not a filing. I want it to happen in that room." Patricia studied her, not with doubt, more like she was taking the measure of something. "If you go into that room," she said carefully, "everything you present needs to be airtight. Documented, factual, no accusations you can't support, no emotion that gives anyone a reason to dismiss you." "I know," Denise said. "Then let's make sure the folder is ready." She called David from the parking garage on her way to her car. "I met with Patricia," she said. "How'd it go?" "Good. She confirmed everything." Denise unlocked her car and sat down behind the wheel without starting it. "The dinner is in 2 weeks, Friday the 18th. I need you to help me build the folder she'll review before I walk in." "I'll clear my Saturday," he said. "David." She paused. "Make sure every number is right, every date, every amount." "I know," he said. "I need it clean," she said. "I need it to be the kind of thing nobody in that room can argue with." "It will be," he said. "I'll make sure of it." She looked through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking garage, gray and flat and solid. "Friday the 18th, she said. "Friday the 18th, he said back. She hung up. She started the car. The restaurant was called Harmon and Reed. It was the kind of place that had no prices on the menu and no music loud enough to hear. Dark wood panels, white tablecloths, candles in low glass holders that threw soft orange light across the faces of people who had spent their careers learning how to look comfortable in rooms like this. Denise had spent her career drawing blood at 6 in the morning. She wore a deep navy dress she had owned for 3 years and never had occasion to put on. It fit her well. Her hair was pulled back cleanly. She had a small clutch bag that held her phone, her lipstick, and a folded copy of the folder David had spent his entire Saturday building with her, the same folder now tucked inside a slim leather portfolio she had placed under her chair when she sat down. Terrence had looked at her when she came out of the bathroom. "You look nice," he said. She said, "Thank you." He didn't notice anything else. The dinner was 40 people, partners in dark suits, junior associates trying to look relaxed, clients who asked careful questions about the firm's growth trajectory. Terrence worked the room the way he always did. Handshake here, laugh there, his voice carrying just enough to fill whatever space he was in. Denise sat at their assigned table and watched. She watched Vanessa Reyes arrive in a cream blazer and take a seat 3 tables away. Watched her scan the room. Watched her eyes land on Terrence, then drift, briefly, almost imperceptibly, toward Denise. Vanessa looked away first. Gloria was seated near the back at a table with 2 other senior spouses. Denise had known she was coming. She had not told Terrence that she'd spoken to Gloria 3 days ago. Had not told him anything. She ate her dinner, she answered questions from the man beside her, a partner's husband who asked what she did for work, and listened genuinely when she told him. 3 jobs, he said, looking at her. That's serious. It was, she said. The word was sat in her chest, like something warm and settled. The toast came at 8:40, between the main course and dessert. Terrence stood up at the front of the room with a glass of champagne. He had that look on his face, the one she had memorized over 6 years, the look of a man who was exactly where he had always believed he belonged. "I want to take a moment," he said, "to thank the people who made this possible." His voice was smooth, practiced. "This firm took a chance on me, and I don't take that lightly. I want to thank the partners who saw potential when I was still proving it. My colleagues who pushed me." He smiled, broad, warm, the smile that had worked on everyone for as long as she could remember. "And everyone in this room who believed in me." The room applauded, glasses lifted. Denise's name did not appear anywhere in his speech. She sat for exactly 3 seconds after the clapping started. Then she stood up. She walked to the front of the room at a normal pace. Not rushing, not hesitating. Her heels were quiet on the floor. She picked up a clean champagne flute from the nearest table as she passed it, and when she reached the front, she turned to face the room. Terrence stared at her. His smile flickered. "Denise, I just want to add something," she said. Her voice was even, carrying but not raised. "I hope that's all right." She looked out at the room. 40 faces, partners, associates, clients, Vanessa, 3 tables back, very still. "My name is Denise Carter. I'm Terrence's wife." She paused a half-second. For anyone who didn't know, he had one. Nobody laughed, nobody moved. "I wanted to thank you all for celebrating the man I funded." She said it plainly, not with venom, just with the same flat accuracy she used when she read back patient information to confirm a chart. "Starting 6 years ago, I worked 3 jobs to pay for his education. Phlebotomist, rideshare driver, weekend caterer." She held up 1 finger at a time as she said each one. "I deferred my own nursing school enrollment every single year. I covered tuition, rent, bar exam prep costs, and living expenses while he finished his degree." She bent down and picked up the portfolio from where she had set it on the edge of the nearest table and removed the folder. 8 months ago, a business credit line was opened in both our names. I was not told about it. $40,000 was drawn from it and used as a down payment on a condominium I was also not told about, purchased for the purposes of a relationship with a colleague that, according to the messages I recovered from our shared cloud account, began 14 months before his graduation. She looked at Terrence once. His face had gone the color of old chalk. "While I was still working 3 jobs to pay his tuition." She walked to the head table. She stopped in front of the managing partner, a broad-shouldered man named Hargrove, who had not moved, and set the folder in front of him. "This contains the credit line documentation, the property records, the message timeline, and 6 years of my financial contributions, organized by date." She stepped back. I thought you should have it. The room was completely silent. Terrence stood at the front, frozen, his champagne glass still in his hand. Vanessa had both palms flat on the table. Gloria, in the back of the room, was not looking at her son. Denise picked up her clutch from the table where she'd been sitting. She walked toward the door at the same pace she had come in. She did not look back. The call came on a Tuesday. Denise was in the hospital break room, still in her scrubs, eating a sandwich she had packed the night before. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her tray. David. She wiped her hands and picked up. The firm called their employment counsel this morning, he said without a greeting. Terrence is on administrative leave effective today. Ethics review, pending investigation, financial misconduct, and failure to disclose a relationship with a subordinate colleague. Denise looked at the far wall, a motivational poster, a corkboard with shift schedules pinned to it. Okay, she said. Denise. His voice was steady. It's moving. I know, she said. Thank you, David. She hung up and finished her sandwich. She heard about Vanessa secondhand through her attorney, who heard it from Hargrove's office during a routine exchange of documents. Vanessa Reyes had walked into the managing partner's office the morning after the dinner and requested a transfer to the firm's Atlanta branch. She had not given a detailed reason. She didn't need to. Hargrove had granted the request within 48 hours. What Denise's attorney told her, quietly and only because it was relevant to the timeline, was that Vanessa had confronted Terrence the same night as the dinner in the parking garage outside Harmon and Reed. That she had asked him, point blank, whether he had ever actually filed for separation. He hadn't. There were no papers. There had never been any papers. Denise did not feel satisfaction when she heard that. She didn't feel much of anything. She had already known what Terrence was capable of. Learning the shape of one more lie was like finding one more bill in a stack she had already counted. Gloria called on a Thursday evening. Denise was driving, not a rideshare, just driving herself home from a grocery run, the radio off, the windows cracked. She pulled over when she saw the name on the screen. I spoke to your attorney this afternoon, Gloria said. Her voice was careful, not rehearsed, but slow in the way of someone choosing their words on purpose. She asked me about what Terrence told me, about you being distant and cold, about the marriage falling apart on its own. I know, Denise said. She told me she was going to reach out to you. I told her the truth. A pause. All of it, what he said, when he said it, I told her that too. Another pause, longer than the first. I want you to know, I wasn't protecting him. Not anymore. Denise looked through the windshield at the dark street. A streetlight buzzed overhead. A woman walked a small dog past the front of her car and didn't look up. Gloria, she said, you didn't owe me that. I know it wasn't easy. My ex-husband passed the bar exam in 1987, Gloria said quietly. I made his lunches for 3 years. I typed his papers before we had a computer. I watched him walk out of that marriage the same summer he made junior partner. She exhaled slowly. I didn't help you the way I should have. I should have seen it sooner. Denise didn't say anything for a moment. You helped when it counted, she said. They stayed on the phone a few more minutes without saying much. When they hung up, Denise sat in the car a little longer than she needed to. Then she drove home. Terrence did not fight it. That was the part she had not been certain of. She had built the documentation to withstand a contest. David had made sure of that. But she had known that Terrence was a lawyer, even a suspended one, and lawyers did not always choose the rational path when their pride was involved. But the evidence left him nowhere to stand. The credit line was in both their names. His signature was on the disclosure document he had signed without reading. The cloud messages were time-stamped. The condo's purchase records were public. His own mother had provided a sworn statement confirming the narrative he had quietly constructed to make the marriage's collapse look like Denise's fault. He had built an exit strategy. He just hadn't anticipated that she had been building one too. His attorney made a counterproposal in the third week. It was modest. Her attorney declined it in a single paragraph. The settlement was finalized on a Friday morning. Denise sat across a conference table from her attorney in a building downtown, a pen in her hand and a stack of papers in front of her. She read every page. She had always read everything, every chart, every agreement, every contract, and this was no different. The condo transferred into her name. The business credit line, drawn without her consent, was to be repaid in full from Terrence's assets. Spousal support was awarded for 4 years, structured around her documented financial contributions across 6 years of his education. She signed each page at the marked line. Turn to the next. Signed again. When the last page was done, her attorney slid the stack neatly together and set a binder clip across the corner. "That's it," she said. Denise put the pen down on the table. "That's it," she said. The scrubs were new. That was the first thing Denise noticed as she walked through the hospital's east corridor on the morning of her first clinical rotation. Not secondhand, not borrowed, not bought on a payment plan stretched over 3 months. New, paid for with her own money, folded out of their packaging the night before, and hung on the back of her bedroom door so she could see them when she woke up. Small thing. But she noticed it. The nursing program had started in January, 7 weeks after the settlement was finalized. She had driven herself to orientation on a Tuesday morning, parked in the same lot she had used for years as a phlebotomist, and walked into a classroom full of people who were 10 years younger and twice as nervous as she was. She had sat in the front row. The coursework was hard. It was supposed to be. She had known going in that she was coming to it later than most, with a full-time job behind her and years of exhaustion that didn't disappear just because her circumstances had changed. But she had also spent 6 years becoming the kind of person who did not quit things because they were hard. That had not gone anywhere. She had just finally pointed it at something that was hers. She kept one job, part-time phlebotomy, 3 shifts a week, early mornings. It covered her living expenses without stretching her thin. The settlement handled the rest. The meal prep business had been Angela's idea first, though she'd never admit to pushing it. "You made those lemon herb chicken trays for the Hendersons' baby shower," Angela had said one evening, 3 months after the settlement, the two of them sitting at Denise's kitchen table with takeout containers between them. "And Marisol asked me twice last week if you did orders." "I was just doing her a favor." "She wants to pay you," Angela said flatly. "That is not a favor. That is a customer." They had laughed, and then, over the next 2 weeks, they had built a spreadsheet, filed the paperwork, and opened a small meal prep service for new parents, ready-made, freezer-friendly meals delivered to families in their first month home with a newborn. They called it First Month Meals. Angela handled the client intake, pulling from her network in the labor and delivery unit. Denise handled the cooking and the logistics, folding in everything she had learned from 6 years of weekend catering jobs. It ran out of her kitchen on Sundays. It was small and manageable, and, for the first time in her working life, something that felt like hers in every direction. Gloria mentioned Terrence on a Sunday afternoon in March, standing at Denise's kitchen counter while Denise portioned chicken into labeled containers. "He's renting something on the east side," Gloria said. She wasn't looking at Denise. She was peeling the plastic wrap off a tray the way she always did when she had something to say she wasn't sure how to start. "Near the bus line." Denise kept counting portions. "He's telling people you overreacted," Gloria added. Her voice was careful, not apologetic, just honest. That it was a private matter, that you didn't need to handle it the way you did. Denise set the spoon down, thought about it for a moment the way you turn something over to see if it still has weight. It didn't. "Okay," she said. and picked the spoon back up. Gloria watched her for a second. Then she nodded once, slowly, and went back to the tray. The ethics review had taken 4 months. The firm had concluded with findings of financial misconduct and failure to comply with internal relationship disclosure policy. Terrence had been terminated. His application for bar admission in the state had been flagged pending the firm's report. The condo, transferred to Denise in the settlement, she had sold 8 months later for a clean profit, putting the proceeds toward tuition and a modest emergency fund. She had heard none of that from Terrence. She had heard it from David and her attorney in clean, brief updates, and she had filed each piece of information away with the same efficiency she had spent years applying to other people's paperwork. She graduated in May, near the top of her cohort. Angela was in the 3rd row, standing before they were told to stand. Gloria was beside her, wearing a yellow blouse and crying in a way she seemed genuinely surprised by. Denise walked across the stage and shook the dean's hand and accepted the folder with both of hers. On her first morning of clinical rotation, she stopped in the corridor outside the East Wing and caught her reflection in the long window that faced the parking lot. The scrubs were a deep navy. Her badge was clipped at her chest, her name printed clearly beneath the department's seal. She looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was standing. She stood there for a moment. Not long, just long enough. For 6 years, she had poured herself into someone else's future. The early mornings, the late nights, the tips folded into an envelope on the counter, the just one more year that kept becoming the next year, and the one after that. This was hers. All of it. Every early morning from here forward. Denise looked at her own reflection and felt cleanly and without apology, proud. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day.